Good evening and welcome to The Right Side. I'm your host, Chris Pareja, and this is our show where we talk about today's news, views, and trends from an admittedly conservative perspective. This evening, I'm joined by Micheal Ramirez, a Pulitzer Prize-winning cartoonist, editor, and general havoc wreaker from the conservative side of things. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us.
To be belligerent, I think.
I'm trying to figure that one out myself.
Well, you know, the politicians think they're paid to be belligerent. They're just belligerent.
Well, there you go.
That's why you have to have political cartoonists.
But they keep you just ripe with content, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. The best gag writers in the business are politicians.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we pay a lot to have those guys at our service.
Absolutely.
So tell me, I mean, you've got the name Ramirez, you're in Southern California. How long have you been diagnosed with conservatism?
Well, you know, since a very young age, my father was a devout Roman Catholic. He was half Spanish, half Mexican. My mother is Japanese, so it comes from a very traditional, conservative orthodoxy. I think those combined elements have always taught me self-responsibility, I think, which is sort of the foundation of conservatism. And in Japan, especially in their culture, where anything that you do reflects on the family, responsibility is very, very important. So I think that's kind of the hallmark of the conservative roots that I've adopted.
So, but being conservative, we're known as being a lot of things. Funny isn't one of them. How did you get into the whole mindset of cartooning and making a political point through your artwork?
Well, you know, Chris, I don't know. I think as a conservative, in witnessing these last 5.5 years, you'd have to have a good sense of humor, really, or else it would be self-destructive, I think. You know, as a political cartoonist, well, first of all, I never envisioned myself being a political cartoonist. It wasn't something that I sort of chose at any stage of my career, except when I finally just made the leap to doing political cartoons. I wanted to be a cardiovascular surgeon. All my brothers and sisters are doctors except for me. And I was a journalist in high school, but it was because we had a closed campus. The only way you could get off campus was if you were the editor, you could write yourself a press pass. And whenever the waves were over 4 foot, I had to, go write a story about that. When I went into college, I continued to write, but I was a triple major, biological sciences, fine art studio painting, and art history, but only because at the time medical schools were looking for well-balanced students, and so I thought I'd combine those elements. Well, I wrote for my school newspaper, and the first time I did a cartoon, because I was carrying a painting and I was filing a story with my editor. She said, "I didn't know you could draw. Why don't you do a cartoon on the student election?" And I did this drawing, and it had more of a response than any editorial or any story I'd ever written. And I suddenly realized that the power of the image is far more powerful than the written word, because people are visually stimulated by images, and I think they're kind of drawn to art. I think that's when I realized how effective as a communication tool this could be. And when you think about it, editorial cartooning is sort of like advertising. With you've got about 3 seconds to capture somebody's attention and to deliver the point or to sell the product that you're selling. The only difference is with advertising, you're selling a product. With editorial cartoons, you're selling an idea. And it can be a great medium to try to translate things that are important to society, to try to wean them off to destructive trails that they're taking with a progressive agenda. Try to show them what the long-term consequences are of the type of rules that we are writing as a self-governing democratic republic, that's what everybody has to realize, that in this country, the people have the power, and it's organized around the individual, individual responsibility, liberty, freedom, a strong defense. Those are the principles that this country was founded on. And government is just a mechanism used to make sure that things are run efficiently, but not to to rule our lives. Right. That's against the principles of what our founding fathers wanted.
But you've chosen a medium and an art form that has crossed boundaries. And we were talking before the show a little bit about how even people who would theoretically disagree with your ideas and probably over time discovered how much they disagreed with your ideas. But at the LA Times, as an example, you were able to get in and move around and do what you needed to do, even though you weren't necessarily philosophically aligned.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'll confess, I'm an equal opportunity offender, folks. You know, what I do isn't about party affiliation. It's about right and wrong. It's about thinking about the consequences of what we're doing and what the long-term consequences of those issues are. I just happen to be conservative because they're right most of the time. You know, frankly, you know, collectively, I think they're more grounded in realistic and practical reality than progressives are. I mean, idealism's great. If you could redistribute everything, make everybody live in a kind of nirvana and a heaven, that'd be great. But it's not reality. No. Reality is you could take all the wealth and redistribute it, and people would be equal, but they'd have much less, and there wouldn't be a creation of jobs or innovation. I mean, think about it. When you think about capital in these terms, in a broader idea, you've got a limited range of capital. You know, you cannot just print money for nothing, although they're trying to do it with the QE thing. But you have a defined amount of capital, and you can redistribute it certain ways. You can invest that into the private sector that creates innovation and creates products and innovations, jobs. That thing feeds on itself and creates an animal, an organism that grows. Or you could put it into bureaucracy, which is just the management of things, which creates nothing. You know, which investment will really pay off?
Right, and well, it's a difference between a scarcity mentality and an abundance mentality, and it is a different approach to life. And honestly, I mean, Marxism, socialism, communism, all great ideas until you add people to them, which totally screws it up because it's counter to our human nature.
Exactly, exactly. When you add the reality into the equation, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's funny that way. So let's look a little bit at maybe some of the cartoons that you have created that we have to share. If we can get one queued up. For example, this one.
Yes, give me liberty or give me a government bailout. You know, that's the fundamental argument that we're having today. Which course are we going to take? We're sort of at that fork in the road. You got 47% of the public that do pay federal income taxes. Once you get over the 50% margin, where people are taking more entitlements than they're giving in or contributing to, then you start the process of changing into a European socialist nation, where people will demand things, will expect, their expectations will be that government will fund their lives. And that's bad, because government doesn't do anything efficiently. As we've seen with Obamacare, it's sort of like going to get to the point where, if you've ever been to the DMV, having the DMV deliver your health care. Government doesn't do anything efficiently.
Yeah, and all the scandals that come out of the DMV for people trying to make an extra buck and everything else with artificial licenses and everything else. I mean, it's a mess.
You know, I just went there the other day just to get my mom an ID, and not even a driver's license, an ID, and it was a 6.5-hour ordeal. So I'm sorry, I think they can probably do things more efficiently.
For sure. So how do you keep the creative juices flowing? I mean, having to come up with something creative every day, it could cease to be fun.
Yes. I mean, you could say that electing Barack Obama is a great way to get the juices going. Here I have a young Barack Obama, and if you look on the board, it says all the answers to all the questions are government, except for one question: democracy is a form of, and then the answer is social inequality, according to Barack Obama. And I got to say, Chris, I got the best gag writers in the world working for me on C-SPAN every single day. I was joking in the green room earlier. I get tired not from drawing cartoons, but from writing thank you letters to this White House for its incompetence. You look on every level, and I don't think I've seen an administration that has been this bad, so incompetent. I mean, you look at you look at our economy, for instance. This is the worst recovery that we've ever had in history. They don't go back to the beginning of time because we didn't keep records back then. But you've got a massive amount of people that are unemployed. You look at the labor participation rate, which is normally 63%. When Barack Obama took over, it was 60.8%. Now it's down to 58.6%. A huge amount of people that have dropped out of the workforce. You've got, millions, hundreds of millions of people that are looking for jobs, that are unemployed, that are in poverty. The poverty rate has escalated from 37 million people to 47 million people. There's nothing this administration has done well. And now it's destroying the best health care in the world, frankly. When you have the premier of Canada going to New York to get medical attention, you know that there's a reason why people come to the United States. I've been to Cuba. I've been to their clinics down there. I know what socialized medicine is like. That's what this administration wants, but they don't have the courage to stand up for their convictions. Instead, they want to dismantle private health care to the crisis point where they can inject a single-payer system in. And it's not good for America.
And so, what is the solution? I mean, obviously you're trying to get your voice in the wilderness heard through your art form. How do we fix it as a country?
Well, you know, I think conservatives need to do things, to be more active in three structures of what our society is built on, I think. And this is what progressives, I think, have done well. We talked about this in the green room a little bit. One, education reform. What progressives did was they took over education. We're talking about the future generation of Americans. If you can propagandize them early, if you could revise the curriculum, if you can revise history, you can engage those children at a young age and dismantle the social construct that our founding fathers believed in, and the constitutional framework that was designed that created America. You can undermine all that through education. And they've done that. They do it in lower education. They do it in higher academia. Secondly, they've taken over popular culture, so they reinforce these ideas through the mediums of television and entertainment. And so they sort of re-inject those ideas in these kids that they've been training all along. And then they've taken over the media as a third institution, which reaffirms all this. It's supposed to be the unbiased referee, but it isn't. Right. And it reaffirms all those notions that they've instilled in them through education. Conservatives need to take those institutions back if they're going to have a dramatic effect. I've got a friend of mine, Mark Joseph and John Sullivan. John did he was a director and produced the Obama 2016 movie that came out, Obama's America. They've been trying to put together a Ronald Reagan biopic, a big screen, sort of like the Thatcher movie. For the past 5.5 years, they're having trouble finding funding for what ought to be the iconic American story, Ronald Reagan from rags to riches. You know, it deals with the constitutional construct of our country. And yet they can't get this thing. Well, they're getting pretty close to getting it funded, but 5.5 years is a long time to do something like that. Conservatives need to be engaged. They should go after education. We just saw the report that just came out yesterday. We're in the bottom of all the industrialized nations in every category in education. Nobody can be saying that public education is doing a good job. Reform it. Take it back. They need to take popular culture. They need to take that back. The media. They need to hold them accountable. Look at the litany of issues that we've dealt with this administration, from Fast and Furious to the IRS scandals to Benghazi. We have no idea what happened in Well, we know what happened, but the media is not publishing what really happened. You should go after the media. If you don't hear them telling the truth, then go after them. And they need to take those institutions back.
But the stats that I hear say that people trust the media less and less. They're looking at them as being complicit. They're looking at other sources of information. Obviously, the internet is surging in that department as well. Do you think that trend will continue? And this is from a guy who's actually inside the media in a different area. But are they screaming? Are they squeamish that they're going to go away?
I think they are, but the problem is the relevancy of it. I mean, if it's reduced their credibility to the point where people don't really care. One of the things is I give speeches all around the country, and most Americans agree on most issues. But when I'm talking to university students and I ask them what their source for the news is, and they tell me it's Jon Stewart on the Comedy Channel, that is a problem. You need to reinstill credibility in the media, and the only way to do it is for them to be more objective.
Is that also, and this actually falls right into your wheelhouse, is part of the reason that the younger crowds are consuming their information in that way is that it's become more entertaining. Or it allows, and some of them have lost the capability of critical thought, but having someone critically think for them, is that part of the draw, or is it something else?
Well, yeah, I think it's laziness. I think they've instilled this kind of laziness in the next generations, where everything's delivered to them. And perhaps maybe it's just there's so much media out there, it's hard to filter out what is correct and what isn't. You know, I think part of the problem is that the younger generations don't trust the media, and for good reason, because of what they read in the paper and what they see on the internet are two different things altogether. If you don't instill that credibility back into the media, when there's a big story like Benghazi, for instance, which was, now we know, a continuous assault on the compound for 7.5 hours, where you had a 17-member security team withdrawn 1 month before the anniversary of 9/11. And you're not hearing this in the mainstream media, but you're hearing it on the internet. That's a problem. They know that the resourcing is not credible, and so they're not going to follow it. You know, part of it is the practical application of the print trying to challenge a 24-hour news cycle with cable. You know, that they've been trying to change the format into a sort of digestive format so that they compete with live news that happens 24 hours. You're not going to be able to compete with that. What newspapers and print media should do is they should deliver the details of the news, because where the cable might be able to deliver it quickly, they only have a 15-second portion of time to tell very complex issues, where print and paper can explain everything in full detail.
Well, but not only that, print has the ability to leverage time, whereas in many cases some of the cable outlets or others that are responding immediately to the news aren't necessarily doing it accurately.
Right.
And accuracy is something that I think has been lost in a lot of reporting, and then the accuracy when it comes out later ends up being a side note after people have gotten what they chose to digest.
Right.
Right.
You know, part of the problem is people need to be more proactive rather than reactive in politics, and they need to hold these institutions of the media responsible, so that when you hear something wrong or erroneous, that you call in or you write in, or if they fail to deliver the news in a substantive, objective way, well, then don't watch them. The bottom line for all these organizations are they're capitalist entities. If you stop watching them, if they lose market share, then they will make those kinds of changes.
And so how are you doing things differently, for example, at the Investor's Business Daily?
Well, you know, I've got the luxury of co-managing IBD's editorial page, and I think we probably have the best editorial page in the country, because we don't worry about political correctness. What we worry about is objectivity and accuracy. And we try to present detailed information about the stories and get it correct. And we don't worry about the political consequences of what we're doing, because we're thinking about the long-term objective, which is informing the readers so that in a self-governing democratic republic, they will have the tools to be able to decide what their future is going to be.
Accurate information for an informed citizenry. Crazy talk.
It's a crazy idea, huh? The media actually giving you objective news.
Yeah. And so do you see that as becoming more of a trend going forward for some of the other outlets? Will we be able to hold them accountable enough to make them do that? Well,
you know, the problem is you can't force this in a country that's enshrouded in liberty and freedom. Those are decisions that people have to make. And all our founding fathers warned us about this. You know, Ben Franklin said, you know, the most responsible tool that people have is getting a media to deliver them the proper information. You have to demand that. People have to be involved. You know, people feel disjointed from politics because they don't think they're having any effect. But when you look at this last election, the margin was really about 350,000 votes in the right states. And Mitt Romney could have been the victor instead of Barack Obama. That's how close these elections are becoming. Every circumstance, every person's participation on a grassroots level has a big effect. It can produce shockwaves. If you can get enough of your neighbors together, if you can be proactive enough, you can make huge changes. And that's basically, you know, what we've seen in the last 5.5 years. They haven't been good changes for America. They've been bad. And they've been based on people that are largely uninformed, as we've seen. If we could get the informed masses to do the same thing, there could be a great transformation back to our constitutional structure, back to our constitutional roots, which is what I think America needs.
Well, one of your cartoons that just streamed by was about we the government, drawn on the constitutional parchment, if you will.
Right.
There it is again. I mean, do you think people have slipped into, first of all, not understanding what our founding documents are all about in the first place, but beginning to think that their rights are given to them by government versus...
Well, absolutely. I mean, you could ask a lot of people about Locke. You could ask them about our founding fathers, Madison, the Federalist Papers. Ask them if they've read it. More often than not, the answer is no. These are things that people need to be informed about because, look, if you don't understand what your constitutional structure is, if you don't understand what those foundational rights are, then it's very easy to strip those rights away. And that's what's happening right now. You know, as they revise history, as you get away from the establishment of this grand experiment in democracy, these rights are slowly being eroded away because people don't understand what they are.
Well, and they don't understand that their privacy is important and that it was protected in the founding documents, and then you get the NSA types of spying scandals, you get the treatment at the TSA stations, etc., where people are giving away their rights for what they believe are is in their best interest.
Sure. And you know, what you said I think is very, very important, Chris, which is these are inalienable rights that were given not by government, but given by God.
Right.
That these are rights that we are born with. And government is just the instrument to ensure that these freedoms, these liberties, are contained.
Right. Well, we only have a few seconds left in this segment, but I wanted you to just let people know where they can find out more about you, your books, and other information. Do you have a website that you can send them to?
Absolutely. They can go to investors.com/editorials or investors.com/cartoons. Or, you know, you could just Google Investors Business Daily. Frankly, I think we have the best editorial page in the country. And you know, get a good dose of it. You'll see my cartoons. You'll see the editorial pages. We have fearless, intelligent writers, something that you probably won't see on MSNBC. And they will give you the truth. They will deliver you a dose of it. We write more editorials than most editorial pages that I know, 5 to 7 pieces a day. And they will be on the issues that are important so that you're informed. As an informed voter, you can help make dramatic change in America.
Thanks for that disclaimer at the end. I wanted to make sure people knew if they read this stuff, they might end up informed, which might throw off everything.
I know, absolutely.
So, Mike, thanks for joining us. If you hold on for just a moment, we'll be right back after a word from our underwriter, the Conservative Forum.
The Conservative Forum of Silicon Valley began with 20 conservatives meeting at a restaurant in November of 2003. Our mission is to promote the principles of American liberty through education. By 2012, we had grown to over 600 paid members. Our monthly meetings feature well-known and prestigious conservative speakers addressing issues that are critical to our country's very survival. This includes speakers like Victor Davis Hanson, Andrew Breitbart, David Horowitz, and many others. In addition to our monthly meetings, we sponsor a conservative local cable access TV show, The Right Side, covering today's topics. Our Constitution discussion group not only teaches the Constitution, but started our annual essay contest that awards 2 $1,000 scholarships to local high school seniors. We are a virtual clearinghouse for grassroots organizations by providing them with table space at no charge in our exhibit area. There are typically a dozen groups represented. If you are like-minded, join us at our next meeting and become motivated and empowered. Liberty, made in America.
And welcome back to The Right Side. Again, this is the show where we go over today's news, views, and trends from an admittedly conservative perspective, and that was a word from our underwriter, the Conservative Forum. We appreciate them underwriting the show because they make it possible, but what they're really all about and what they're known best for is for their speaker series, which is the reason we were blessed to have Mike in the studio with us this evening. He'll be speaking later at the Conservative Forum, and events typically start around 7 p.m. and go till about 8:30, about 3 minutes from here at the IFES Portuguese Hall here in Mountain View at 432 Stearland Road. What you'll find if you go to theconservativeforum.com is the times, the location, and the list of speakers that are coming up soon. For example, in January, we have Evan Sayet, the author and political satirist that you'll find roaming around the Bay Area at various conservative events as well, but he comes in from way out of town, so look forward to that. In February, Victor Davis Hanson, another well-known author and speaker. In March, Greg Lukianoff who's the president for the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. In April, Dr. Bert Folsom, a Hillsdale professor and well-known author. And in May, one that a lot of folks are looking forward to, Sheriff Joe Arpaio. And again, you can find out those details at theconservativeforum.com. And normally, at this point, I say goodbye, but we had just another request from Mike to make a clarification on something that he said previously.
Right. I didn't mean to say that to those liberties being contained, to make sure that we have these liberties and that government doesn't obstruct your liberties. And those are important things for our future generations to understand. That's what makes America unique.
Absolutely. And it is critically important that we do understand that America is a unique place in the world.
Right.
That was by design, and it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. You know, we are an extraordinary nation. We are not one nation among many, many nations.
Right. And so it's okay to be special?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And you shouldn't be penalized for it.
Yeah. Success, being special, being unique are things that you should actually be celebrated for.
Right. They're traditional American ideals. I mean, that's what makes this country so distinctive, is that we take everything from all the different mixtures of cultures, find the best in everyone, and create what is inherently American.
Well, I appreciate that insight, and I'm glad you were able to make that clarification.
Absolutely.
But I also want people to know that they have the ability to learn more about Mike and his thoughts, as well as his partners in crime, the good kind of crime, at the Investors Business Daily site, which is investors.com, and hit the /editorial. You'll learn more. On that note, we do want to thank you again for joining us on The Right Side. Again, I've been your host, Chris Pareja, and I was joined by Micheal Ramirez, and we'll look forward to seeing you again sometime soon, either on the show or in person at the forum. Thanks again.